There's a lot I could say about Honsou, but most of it would get me demonetized. So instead I'm going to say this. Honsou of the Iron Warriors is my favorite Chaos Space Marine in all of 40k. He's an undying, selfish little cockroach. He's his own worst enemy. He's the blood rival of Uriel Ventris of the Ultramarines. He's just a funny little rascal who always finds a boot planted in his crotch whenever he gets a little too powerful. I know the Iron Warriors are believers in Chaos Undivided, but it feels like Tzeentch might have a favorite of the Shovel Boys, and he's just too entertained to let him die. As far as we're concerned, Honsou's story begins on the world of Hydra Cordatus. His nameless warsmith has led 3 great companies to this world to besiege a citadel known as Tor Christo. None of the 3 company captains understand why they're there. All that they know is that if they fail, their master will kill all 3 of them. Honsou is introduced to their reader crawling through the ash of this barren world, his company of other half-breeds following behind him. About 3 centuries ago, Honsou and his brothers were kidnapped from other human worlds. They were turned into Iron Warriors via recycled parts of dead Iron Warriors and stolen geneseed from the Imperial Fists, marking him and the other hybrid Space Marine as pariahs among the other Iron Warriors, sharing geneseed with the most hated of the loyalist legions in their eyes. And Honsou is only informally recognized as the captain of the other hybrid Marines. Officially, he has never been granted a title due to his hybrid status. Honsou and his men destroy the lookout towers surrounding the world's only spaceport, and all hell breaks loose after, allowing the Iron Warriors to establish a beachhead to begin their assault on the Citadel. And for those of you who don't know, Iron Warriors live for siegecraft. In the short story Iron Warrior, which takes place after this novel, Storm of Iron, Honsou almost has a bonding experience with one of his quote-unquote Iron Warrior brothers while discussing siegecraft. Even purebred Iron Warriors tend to not be very brotherly with one another, viewing each other more as competition than companions. So for a lowly half-breed like Honsou to end up earning the amount of respect he does is insanely admirable. A true rags-to-riches story in the universe of 40k. Over the course of the siege, the other 2 captains meet a grim fate. The ancient Foryx, who looked down upon the 40,000-year-old Kroger as a young blood, became enamored with the idea of slaying a Warhound Titan in single combat, which, funnily enough, didn't end well for either him or the Titan. After the Titan's reactor went critical, the 2 ended up fused together in a ball of molten slag, and a demon fungus growing inside of Kroger's armor convinced a slave to put it on and kill him, which is a story for another time that deserves to be told on its own. The important thing regarding the story Storm of Iron as far as Honsou is concerned is the fact that the Iron Warriors were successful. They took the fortress of Tor Christo from the forces of the Imperium. They sieged millions of gallons of stolen geneseed. The novel doesn't say that it was just Imperial Fist, but every wiki article seems to say it was just Imperial Fist geneseed, so I'm not really sure about that. And as his warsmith ascended to demon princedom, he inherited what was left of the warband and their fortress in the world of Medrengard, the new homeworld of the Iron Warriors where even Perturabo lives these days. Man, Medrengard is really hard to say. So our boy did good there. He took a ton of geneseed back to Abaddon the Despoiler, the one who ordered the warband to go to Hydra Cordatus in the first place. And he even managed to smuggle a few 100,000 gallons of geneseed back to his place, his newly inherited fortress on the Iron Warriors' homeworld, where, using some kind of warp magic, he turned captured human women into the Demunla, pumped their bodies full of the stolen geneseed and captured human boys, and somehow intended to make new Chaos Space Marines from that process. Don't ask me how that works, and frankly, I don't want to know. And of course, when our guy's riding high, something in the universe says he has to get a big kick in the nards. Enter Ultramarine 4th Company Captain Uriel Ventris, fresh off his wind at Tarsus Ultra, and sent on a Pentian crusade after running off with the Death Watch instead of fulfilling his duty as the company's captain. He and best friend forever Pausanias were given one objective: to find the source of the warp disturbance on Medrengard, the previously mentioned Demunla, and destroy them. 2 men versus a fortress full of Iron Warriors and God knows what else. Iron Warriors also fresh off of their own recent victory on Hydra Cordatus. Lucky for Uriel, Honsou has a bad habit of making enemies, especially among other Iron Warriors. And the leader of a rival warband had gotten word that he had stolen some of the geneseed for himself. So Uriel Ventris lucked his way into one of the best situations to be storming an Iron Warrior's fortress, with one rival warband trying to beat down its main gate, another band of renegade space marines acting as guerrilla fighters in Honsou's territory, disrupting his supply lines, and a third unexpected faction known as the Unfleshed, the failed byproducts of the Demunla who were flushed down out of Honsou's fortress, who had formed their own tribal society. These beings were in constant pain and reveled at the idea of getting vengeance on Honsou. So Uriel Ventris, being the diplomat ultramarine that he is, was able to get the renegade space marines and the Unfleshed onto his side, which, despite the boost in numbers, did not go their way. They were almost immediately captured. Almost all of the renegade space marines were killed by Honsou and his men. Honsou stole Pausanias' necrodermis prosthetic arm. Basically, it used to be a normal prosthetic, but while fighting Necrons, he got some necrodermis on it and it changed. And if it wasn't for the other band of Iron Warriors and the attack of the Unfleshed, Uriel Ventris and Pausanias probably would have died here. But instead, Uriel went berserker mode while trapped inside a Demunla, killed the damned thing, went on an unarmed butcher spree through Honsou's fortress, freed the Demon of Khorne that was being used as a power source for the fortress, shot Honsou through the back of the head, and escaped with his best friend and a legion of the Unfleshed, leaving Honsou with a pile of rubble that was his inheritance, the fortress of Karlan Gol, I remember the name now, a new captain in the form of the second-in-command of the attacking warband, Grendel, an unlikely alliance with the leader of what was left of the renegade space marines, Dark Veins, a former Raven Guard space marine, and a deformed clone of Uriel Ventris that was birthed by the Demunla he had been stuffed inside of, an incredibly powerful warp-fueled creature known as the Newborn. Yeah, that prosthetic eye Honsou sporting, that's courtesy of good old Uriel Ventris himself. And the round of a bolt pistol going through his head and somehow not blowing it off his shoulders. So with his home and army thoroughly destroyed, Honsou said, "Shut up nerds, we're going on a road trip," and got everybody aboard his new flagship, the Warbreed, the last worthwhile piece of his inheritance from his original warsmith. It was Dark Veins who gave Honsou direction at this point, telling him of a festival undergone by the forces of chaos known as the Skull Harvest. And I'm gonna be honest, this was my absolute favorite Warhammer short story I have ever read. The Skull Harvest is a tournament of sorts between different chaos leaders and their champions. The idea being that each warband leader killed increases the strength of the one who slew them. A proper you keep what you kill situation. And the warp-infested planet this tournament takes place on is known as New Badab, ruled over by Huron Blackheart, the tyrant of Badab, the traitorous chapter master of the Astral Claws, and the cause of the Second Badab War. Although I would be remiss to say that this took place after Honsou and the boys nuked Tarsus Ultra, the planet Uriel Ventris risked everything to save from a Tyranid invasion. So Honsou and his gang are riding high off of that victory, having slaughtered an entire station's worth of planetary defenders, and having used a stolen Mechanicus virus meant to engage crop growth to suffocate the planet of Tarsus Ultra with the alien fungus left behind by the Tyranid swarm. Being so close to the warp, the powers of the Newborn were basically unstoppable, and Honsou's commander Grendel had infiltrated a warband of Khorne, ultimately betraying the leader to rejoin Honsou's side once more. And a Dark Veins, formerly of the Raven Guard, found himself enamored with a warband associated with the god Slanesh. These androgynous, super quick and agile swordsmen, led by Notha Atasi, who ended up joining Honsou's warband after surviving the tournament, somehow having survived getting his chest caved in by Honsou's armored boot, and later going on to thank Honsou for the pleasure of it, with the true biggest threat of the tournament being the champion of Khorne, Pashtok, a former space marine, and one of the coldest and most calculating champions of Khorne that has ever been portrayed in Warhammer. He represents more of the honor side of Khorne's domain and less the feral berserker side. When all was said and done and Honsou stood victorious over the other warbands, he had acquired 15,000 swords, and the respect of Huron Blackheart himself. It was also during this story that the power of the Newborn was put on full display, further emboldened by the energies of the warp surrounding him. However, it was also established that the creature was at war with himself. Ghostly memories of the life of Uriel Ventris conflicting with his training as a Chaos Space Marine, threatening to tear the newborn apart. With the Skull Harvest completed, Honsou had one more stop before seeking vengeance against Uriel Ventris. He and the boys were going to have a jailbreak for a demon known as Makar the Thriceborn, a sworn enemy of the Ultramarines being kept in one of their star fortresses, randomly jumping across the galaxy. Last defeated in single combat by Marneus Calgar himself. In a lot of ways, Makar the Thriceborn seems to be foreshadowing for Honsou's ultimate fate, a demonic entity with sworn oaths of vengeance against the Ultramarines who always get so close to victory just to have it yanked away. With Makar liberated and the majority of the 5th Company of the Ultramarines destroyed, Honsou is ready to engage his vengeance, setting his sights on the world of Ultramar itself, with Makar becoming his de facto second-in-command, because nobody's going to tell a demon joyriding a dreadnought that he can't be the second-in-command. And it shouldn't be a spoiler to say that this ultimately didn't go well for Honsou and his warband. Ultramar stands today, their Primarch has returned, Uriel Ventris has survived to become a Primaris Marine and meet the returned Primarch, and Honsou has essentially faded into obscurity, returning to Medrengard in defeat to meet with the Primarch Perturabo. So it should be obvious by now why I like Honsou so much. He's kind of the epitome of what a Chaos Space Marine should be, in my opinion. He's clever, he's violent, he's brutal, he's smart, but his own arrogance is often the cause of his undoing, like most Chaos champions. He's kind of like a smaller scale version of Abaddon, constantly waging his own little wars against the Imperium. And if GW ever did want to replace the War Master with somebody else, Honsou was the only real candidate to fill those shoes. And could you imagine the trail of destruction he would leave behind him if he teamed up with Be'lakor? Those two together would probably be unstoppable. One of the reasons I brought up Honsou's potential fate becoming a demon is because he was actually possessed by one during the siege of Hydra Cordatus. One of the demons that had been trapped inside one of their artillery pieces was broken free when the gun was destroyed and possessed his body. And by possessed, I mean took it on a joyride and slaughtered friend and foe alike, which was the first step in earning the respect of his unnamed warsmith, who mentioned to Honsou it may one day be his own fate to ascend to demon princedom like he did. Honsou also has a black axe with a demon trapped inside. As far as I can remember, and my quick scans of the wiki shows that it doesn't have a name as far as we know. And he also becomes incredibly dependent on his necrodermis arm as time continues, constantly using it to protect himself from what should be lethal blows. And despite his status as a follower of Chaos Undivided, Honsou definitely seems like the type who would end up falling for Tzeentch. Not the basic sorcerer side of Tzeentch, but the schemer, planner side of Tzeentch. Which, in my opinion, if you look at that side of Tzeentch, the Iron Warriors fit that better than Chaos Undivided. But their general distaste for sorcery makes them somewhat opposed to Tzeentch on that level. I don't know, I guess I would just like to see more of Honsou in the future. But it seems like we're not going to be getting any of that with Graham McNeil working on other projects right now. And Honsou never got any kind of representation in the tabletop either, unlike his Ultramarine counterpart Uriel Ventris. And with GW basically refusing to update the Chaos Space Marines as it is right now, we probably won't be seeing much of Honsou ever again. And with that, I'm going to call it quits for now, fellas. Thanks again for watching all the way to the end. It really helps a lot. If you could do me a favor and leave a comment, that seems to help the most with the algorithm. Likes are always helpful too, but for whatever reason, the more comments you get, the more views you get. It just seems to correlate that way for my stuff. Anyway, I hope you guys have a good one. I'm back open to taking suggestions from the audience if you guys want to leave any. This new puppy I'm training is one of the smartest dogs I've ever worked with. She already knows to cry to be let out, and she's been in my house for 3 days now. So yeah, I really don't have my hands full as much as I thought I was going to, but the last puppy I trained was a husky, so you can imagine the difference between a husky and a golden retriever in temperament and trainability. Anyway, you guys have a good one. Thanks again for watching, and feel free to leave any comments or suggestions. Have a good one. Bye.